It's so nice to have you here with us today. And what I'd like for you to do, and let's start on this end, if we will, Representative Wheatley. Just tell us your district and what committee you're for, because we're going to get into specifics about what you do. Today's focus, just so you know, is to talk about their role with minority and small business in Harrisburg, what they do around legislation and how it can benefit us here in Western Pennsylvania. And the mics are on.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So I'm State Representative Jake Wheatley. I represent the 19th Legislative District, which you happen to be in part of. So welcome to the 19th. The district includes what I consider some of the most important neighborhoods in the city across all three rivers. So if you live in the Hill District, or you live in West Oakland, South Oakland, Hazelwood, South Side, Flats or Slopes, or Belsuver, Knoxville, Mount Washington, or if you travel downtown to go over to the north side and central north side, Mexican West Street, Allegheny West, Brightwood, Brighton Heights, Marshall Shadeland, Fine Beach. And if it's doing, and by the way, if you're doing business in the city, you're definitely doing business in your district. So we welcome all opportunities to support and grow small businesses and entrepreneurs. I serve as the Democratic chairman.
We want to talk about that in a minute.
Oh, okay.
I just want everybody to know.
Okay.
Tell us who you are and your district.
Oh, okay. I thought you said committee. Okay.
Good morning. My name is Summer Lee. I am, the newest representative on this panel. I represent the 34th Legislative District, which contains some parts of the Mon Valley, Braddock, Rankins, Woodsville, Homestead, West Homestead area. I also have some of the East End suburbs, and I have some of the East End, so I do border everyone here. I actually border this whole panel, so good morning.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm State Representative Austin Davis, and I have the privilege of representing the 35th Legislative District, which is the heart of the Mon Valley, which is McKeesport, Duquesne, Clairton, Monhall, Whitaker, Versailles Boroughs, South Versailles Township, White Oak, and a little bit of Lincoln Borough and part of West Memphis.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. How you doing today? Great. Good. My name is Ed Gainey, State Representative, and I represent the East End, Garfield, parts of Stanton Heights, East Liberty, Highland Park, Lincoln, Leamington, Larimer, Belmar, Homewood, Wilkinsburg, East Hills, North Point Breeze, parts of Point Breeze, parts of Friendship, and parts of Shady Side. It's an honor to be here this morning and look forward to talking with you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now, Representative Wheatley, I want this to be conversational between the four of you. Tell us about the committees that you serve on and what that means, because a lot of us don't know.
Okay. So I serve as the Democratic, she said it's really on.
They're on. You don't have to move.
All right. So I serve as the Democratic chairman of the Finance Committee. First time in the history of Pennsylvania where African American has taken over that committee. It is a committee that essentially, and for 10 years I served as the appropriation. I was on the appropriation for 10 years. So on that side, I pretty much gave away and spent money. On the finance side, our obligation is to raise the revenue for the state to do the business that it needs to do. And for small business interests, it also oversees a lot of the tax credits and the business kind of tax credits that you use to operate and and to do business in the Commonwealth. So it's been I've been there now going on 6 years. Check 1, 2. So it is a committee that has some interest, I think, to all of you, because we monitor tax policy, but we also monitor the tax credits that businesses use to support the things that they're doing inside our communities. And a special thing for me for the last, 10 years or so, we do a special day in Harrisburg around MBE, WBE, DBE. We call it the lobby day for MBEs and WBEs and DBEs, where we try to bring entrepreneurs from all across the Commonwealth up to the Commonwealth to really try to open up the doors so people don't just see you as the letters, but they actually put faces behind the letters and try to build relationships with the people who spend the money in the various departments. So anyway, this year will be March 23rd, so mark your calendars, come up. We would love to have you and support our activities. So thank you.
Representative Lee?
So I need the mic.
Yeah.
So I'm on 3 committees, and I imagine that my committees are a little less kind of pertinent. What would seem a little less pertinent than Representative Wheatley, who is obviously perfectly suited for this panel just by way of both of his committees. So my committees are the Judiciary Committee, Children and Youth and Local Government. So through Judiciary, we deal with all things incarceration, legal, which in a way absolutely does impact businesses. It does impact our communities in that sense, as we're talking about how do we ensure that folks who have formally come in contact with the criminal justice system, that they're not being held down for the rest of their lives, that they're not being kept from being able to start new ventures and being able to enter into different career fields. So that is something that we do in the Judiciary Committee. Is something that we're working on, even as we're talking about whether they can get a license, when they lose their licenses, how they are being licensed for things. So those folks, which is its own committee, but those folks who might have a career field or a business that they need to get a special license for. Or when we're talking about the other license, when you lose your license, your driver's license, which would then stop you from being able to do certain things. So we do that in Judiciary. Children and Youth, I believe, speaks for itself. I mean, I don't know how many, we have children entrepreneurs, but maybe not as many as you might think. And then local government, all things local government, ordinances, ensuring that local communities are able to have the autonomy to function in the way that they do. Really just making sure that we're kind of supporting those local communities as they are able to run their own communities.
Wonderful.
So,
Representative Austin?
thank you. So I serve on 3 committees. I serve, the largest committee is the House Appropriations Committee. I'm sorry, I have one. The House Appropriations Committee, which, as Jake said, spends money. We help create the budget and craft the budget and shepherd it through the House and what the spending priorities are for the Commonwealth. As it relates to business development, we fund a lot of programs from the Ben Franklin Technology Institute, Ben Franklin Technology Institute, which helps small business with technological advancements, to the PA First initiatives. We make all those investments. We're the committee that all those investments flow through in the Commonwealth. The other 2 committees I serve on are Consumer Affairs, which basically has regulatory control over energy policy, telecommunications, water, sewage authorities to certain degrees. So it's a pretty big committee. We have oversight over the PUC. So if any of you guys do business with the Public Utility Commission, we are the committee that oversees that in the House. And the 3rd committee that I serve on is the House Insurance Committee, a big committee, particularly around healthcare and healthcare costs and how do we drive down those costs for businesses. So I think the committees that I serve on really impact small businesses in almost every facet of your organization.
Thank you.
Thank you. So my first committee is Appropriations, the Vice Chair of the Appropriations Committee, where you heard Austin say we appropriate a lot of money, but we also try to fight for money for areas that we think that is needed. So me and Austin on appropriation, we fight for every dollar to come back to Pittsburgh, because we understand that Pittsburgh and Allegheny is desperately in need for projects. And we got a lot of projects that we feel that will improve the region. My second committee is Transportation, which is a committee I really care about, because right now in 2022, as y'all know, we'll be out of money again. The whole Act 89 will be done, and we have to find ways in order to fund mass transit. So this summer we'll be having a appropriation transportation public hearing in Pittsburgh to discuss what we need to do. So we're not trying to find out in critical times, but we have a time to plan of what we need to do to raise the efficient funds so that we can appropriate it towards transportation so mass transit continues. My third is education, which, I love education because I believe it breaks the chains of poverty. I believe the one thing that no one can take from us is the education that we receive. I also love it because it gives us an opportunity to find out, I know we got some universities here, but actually find out how we can reduce the type of tuition that children have to pay. And we're very big supporters of the PA Promise to allow kids to go to school for free. We have to find a way if we're going to break poverty in order to make tuition affordable for everybody. Because if education is the key to growth, then we got to make sure that happens. And then my last one is health, and health was the one that pushed through medical cannabis so that people could have an opportunity not to be struggling on opioids, but to use the medical cannabis as a way to deal with the illnesses that they have. And I also believe, I don't know if it'll come through judicial or it'll come through health, that we need to seriously have a conversation about the decriminalization and legalization of cannabis, aka marijuana, aka street value weed. So we got to have a conversation talking about what we need to do to give people the lives back. Thank you.
Thank you.
George, just a quick follow-up on committees. The way we get on committees is a very political process. I'm sure you all can imagine, but we are very well represented. I don't think people realize how important it is that Jake is the chairman of the Finance Committee and what that means to the legislature and the programs that he drives out through that committee. But that Ed is the vice chair of the Appropriations Committee on the Democratic side. Ed and I are the only Democrats that serve on the Appropriations Committee west of Harrisburg. And I fought to get on that committee because when the committee roster initially came out, Ed was the only Democrat from Western Pennsylvania on that committee. But it's important that each of us in our respective committees are doing the work to advocate for our region and making sure that we have a strong voice at the table. Because quite frankly, as Philadelphia continues to grow and expand, we have to make sure that we are as aggressive as pushing a Southwestern Pennsylvania agenda as possible.
Thank you. That's a good point to raise. According to the U.S. Small Business Administration, small businesses accounted for 99.6% of all private sector operating in Pennsylvania in 2018. Small businesses also employed 46% of all Pennsylvania employees. What efforts, if any, have you been involved in to support key small business issues? And when I say issues that would help expand the implementation of small businesses? What can we gain from that, from what you do? And how can you advocate more for Western Pennsylvania to ensure that not only small business owners can grow, but we're looking at the whole expansion, and we'll be talking about access to capital and all those things that impact the banks and secondary lending. But what have you been involved in to support key small business issues? Jake?
So I see you gonna keep going, me first down the
No,
road. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, set me here, he set me up. So as I said, from the time I came into Harris, first let me try to do this. The definition of small businesses is very key, right? Because a small business could be anything. I mean, you could be a large profiteer, but small in the industry, and be small business. And we
We're
tried.
talking about under 100 million.
Yeah. So in our efforts in Harrisburg, as you know, we went in 2009 and did a select committee to try to gauge in Pennsylvania specifically how much contracting opportunities are we doing with not just small business, but we wanted to be very particular about MBEs, which are minority owned firms, women-owned firms, and disadvantaged-owned firms, because from the time I came in under Rendell, we had noticed that less than 2 or 3% of contracts from the state was coming to those type of firms. So in 2009, we picked up where Representative Linton from Philadelphia had did in the 80s and asked for the state to do a comprehensive report about what we were doing. And we found that even in 2009, we were still doing less than 10%. And so we also found that we had to be very particular, because if we just used the classification of small businesses, it wasn't going to capture necessarily opportunities for those minority-owned firms, certain women-owned firms in the industries that we wanted. Matter of fact, there was an African-American firm that was in the steel industry who, because in steel, his contracts was bumping him above what would consider small business, but in that industry, he was really at a competitive disadvantage. And so we were trying to, unlike the federal government, where in different categories, they can make different allotments for size and net income, profits, all that other stuff. in Pennsylvania, we would just kind of find you in one way. So we tried, I know you're trying to set me up, so we were trying to figure out a way to specifically do that. And since 2009, we haven't been able to be successful, but that's one of the reasons why we have been encouraging MBEs, WBEs, and other small business owners to come to Harrisburg and lobby for themselves, because we also understand that as a politician, I can have a general sense of what I think you need, but if you're not talking to the men and women in the General Assembly and in the men and women who are in these departments, who are making the regs, who are overseeing the regs, it's hard to understand exactly what you need in your industry, because if you're in the tech industry and you're an MBE, WB, or a small business, your needs are going to be a little different than if you're in the physical construction or if you're in the banking. And so we were trying to get them to help us kind of frame these arguments, but we've been working since 2003 to open up the doors for fairness for small businesses, but primarily, I'll be honest with this, my primary goal was to try to really open up the doors for minority firms, women firms. We are doing something special with veteran-owned firms, because these are firms that don't necessarily have the same advantages as some other firms. So we've really been focusing on that.
When I think about the feeder system of small businesses and the representation through organizations here, they would feed right into you as state representatives to help foster that kind of initiative. Representative Davis, tell us a little bit about what's happening with small businesses in your area and what you're doing in Harrisburg that can help them to grow.
So my area, I probably have one of the most disadvantaged areas of all the folks sitting up here. So small business growth and development is an area in which we struggle. One of the major redevelopment corridors that we've had some success in redeveloping is our brownfield sites. Working with RIDC, Sam is on their board, and we've seen more activity from smaller manufacturers in the last, I'll say, 5 years than we've ever seen. But I think for me, one of the things that I just got passed through the House was a bill giving an environmental protection waiver to land banks, as we see land banks getting started to procure land to redevelop for small businesses. In the Mon Valley, we have a lot of older industrial land.
But would you play that out for us and for the audience on doing that? How does that impact a small business owner?
So one of the issues that we have when we look at, for small businesses looking in the Mon Valley, is space. So where are they going to go? There are a lot of older buildings that are, quite frankly, really expensive to rehabilitate. So in a lot of cases, they need to be torn down. There's a lot of land that has environmental problems that a business would not necessarily take on the liability for redeveloping. So we're trying to incentivize land banks and redevelopment authorities to be more aggressive in taking on those lands to help redevelop them. One of the things that Summer Representative Lee and I toured was Meter Feeder, a small business in Braddock, that was helped by our Ben Franklin centers here in the Commonwealth. So advocating that we're making investments in organizations like that help support small businesses to grow. And there's one big thing I think that really holds back small business in the Mon Valley, and that's transportation. And that's not just small business, that's any business. If you can't adequately get the people that live there to the job centers in Oakland and Pittsburgh, and people can't move there and then get their people to the work site, it's an extreme barrier. I serve on the Port Authority board, and we've been fighting very aggressively this year. Is going to be a big transportation theme for me about how we fund mass transit. So that in my mind is probably the biggest barrier to the growth and development of small businesses in my region.
Representative Gainey, you've got a very exciting amount of activity happening in your district.
You got everything.
And it's nice to see the Homewood Brushton area being revived. What are you doing to support minority business in your district? And how does your work in Harrisburg impact them? And let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. The Ben Franklin initiative is wonderful, but unless someone is advocating from your end to ensure that women and minority businesses get part of that, it's for naught. I used to serve on that, and it was interesting to watch the dynamic. So would you?
So first, let me just start locally. First, thank you for that question. I'm gonna leave the business name. I'm not gonna speak on what business I met with, but it was a business that wants to move into Homewood. And when they came to see me, let me be clear, I'm an African American state representative. So anybody who wants to do business in my district, please don't come to my office with all white people. Don't do that. The first mistake you'll make with me is to come there, because if you know you come and see me, you want to tell me you about diversity, but you don't bring nobody to the table, and your higher management team that looks like me from the door, I don't believe you. So, number one, let me make that statement. Number two is when the business came to see me, the one thing they said, and they have to understand that I've been in this business for quite some years. I ain't been elected that long, but I've been in this game called politics for a minute. I worked for 2 mayors. So when they came to see me, they said, Ed, and I told them I'm a customer of your business. I'm a customer, so I'm not, what I say here, I'm saying because I'm a customer, so you should hear me. When I walk into your store, I've only seen 2 blacks in 3 years. You want to move into Homewood Brushton and do business, I need to know that you won't have a diversity plan, a workforce development plan that speaks to how people in Homewood are going to go to work. Because other than that, I don't care what downtown says, I will not support it. So at the end of the day, the next time that we meet, you need to meet with me talking about how you going to get minorities to work on your job. Because it's rare to me that Giant Eagle can find black cashiers, but you telling me you having a hard time finding black people to work at your establishment the same way you find white people, you find black people. So at the end of the day, it's not about whether you can find them, it's about whether you have the will to go get it. And we have to put in place that we demand jobs. Just like the gender and equity report. We sit here and listen to a gender and equity report like it's the truth. It's a factual lie. And the reason being because every report that talks about growth has a historical content of how we got here. It has recommendations on how we do better. And then it talks about what's going on. That report had nothing. Never talked about the African American influence that we have now. 10 years ago, we only had 2 blacks on the school board. Now we got 5. 10 years ago, you only had 2 black state reps that represented the city of Pittsburgh. Now we got 3. If that ain't black influence, someone got to tell me what it looks like. When we talk about Harrisburg, we're disconnected at is at the end of the day, we need to be meeting with you. We need to be meeting with you to talk about what we need to do. See, because at the end of the day, you have the wisdom to be able to tell us the direction to go. We have the smarts to be able to make it happen. But if there's no communication between us and you, and I'm not only talking about doors, I'm talking about small black businesses. Because at the end of the day, if you want to change the disparity of Pittsburgh, you got to change the wealth of minority communities. So if we're not having conversations about how we improve each other from here to Philly and going to Harrisburg together, then it doesn't matter what elected officials up here, we're going to suffer until we come together and say we demand the right to go to work as vendors and construction workers and everything else in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. When we do that, you'll see a difference.
All right, Ed. Representative Lee, in your district, tell us what's happening with small business, because there are small businesses out there. How can you and your colleagues work to not only advocate better on their behalf, but represent them on policy issues in Harrisburg that will impact your region?
So I think that I have, probably of the 4 up here, I think I have probably one of the more diverse districts as Allegheny County and as Pittsburgh goes. So I have parts of the Mon Valley where we have economic distress, where we have lack of infrastructure and all of those issues that Austin already talked about. But then I also have areas like parts of Hazelwood where we have development opportunities, parts of Squirrel Hill and some of the city. So we kind of have different things going on in different parts of the community. But what I think we're seeing kind of the most opportunity and kind of the most barriers is in our Mon Valley area. So as we're looking at the Cary Furnace, as we're looking at Braddock, which is a community that everybody is kind of looking toward. Everybody's talking about Braddock and trying to figure out what's going to happen in that community. Keeping in mind what's happened in Gainey's district, keeping in mind kind of the displacement that has happened there, and folks in my community who've looked at all the things that have happened in East Liberty, looked at the things that have happened in Lawrenceville, and are now trying to get on top of that. So that's really what is the big thing and the big theme in my community is right now. How do we save our communities from being gentrified, from us being displaced, and how do we get a piece of the pie?
Well, how does that impact the small businesses in your area?
So as people are moving into our district, as we're seeing new restaurants crop up, if we're seeing tech businesses crop up in our district, which we are, Meter Feeder is one tech business that's across the street from us that is Black owned. But as we're getting more Black businesses, we're having a problem with infrastructure. If people want to come into our region, we don't have the infrastructure right now that would support them. So that is one big barrier. As we're talking about Black folks trying to get businesses in our district, we're talking about people who are at a different starting point than other folks. And as we have people who are gatekeeping, people who are controlling, have been controlling our area, and it's not just state reps that we can think of here. We're talking about people at local government on all levels. We're talking about our borough councils, we're talking about our school boards, we're talking about all the people who have been controlling development in our community, who have been so far making decisions around who gets to come in, who gets the attention that they get, and who we're going to take seriously as we're coming. So right now in Braddock and the Mon Valley area, we have different kind of initiatives. So we have people who are coming in, so the enterprise zone is coming in, we have all of our CDCs who are looking at it, but I know that in Braddock what we've done is we've created like a round table, a business round table, so that folks, especially Black folks, people of color, women who are new to business, who have never interacted with kind of the business infrastructure that we already have in Pittsburgh, they're able to come and get training, get information, learn how to network with each other, learn how to access resources that these folks have not been able to access before. So that's one thing that we have going on in my district, going on especially in the Mon Valley. But also, the one thing that we do control too, less than, as some of the more senior reps will tell you, when they used to have walking around money, and we don't have that anymore, but one thing that we do help.
I wish we did.
That is the thing that folks talk about the most, because when they had walking around money, they would be able to invest it in the businesses that we wanted. So for Black reps, that was huge, because as we're going through the bureaucracy of kind of the grant process, it's our folks who are usually being left out of that. So this is kind of the time of year, as we're doing budgetary things, where the governor puts his budget. The Black Caucus, I'm the treasurer of the Black Caucus. So where we put our, so how we're advocating and how we're approaching the budget process and making sure that the governor is recognizing the Black community, recognizing people of color communities as he is putting his money and allocating his money. But also as we're doing the grant process, since we don't have the walking around money, it's a different process now, it's a little bit more robust, but it's important that we have reps like us here, that we have Black reps who have different kind of relationships with businesses and people who are looking to create businesses. Because as they go to apply for grants, as they go to bring forth their ideas, we're now able to try to help them, and we're able to advocate there in Harrisburg. So that is one power that we have. Advocating there for the grants that go out, making sure that we are helping to direct them, that we're helping to do what Gainey said. You can't come into our business, into our office and say that you want us to supply you with $1 million grant, that you want a $500,000 grant, but then you also don't have any folks in our community. So we've been able to bring back $2 million just to the Mon Valley area. The Carrie Furnaces, we're directing that, but also making sure that we're not getting folks who are going to come in and further pollute us, folks who are not going to come in and continue to take us in directions that we're not willing to go in. But for some of those kind of personal businesses, making sure that they are getting resources and they're getting access.
Let me share with you an initiative that I'm a part of, and Jim Beer is here from the Greater Pittsburgh Chamber, our Compete PA. We were successful in getting NOL in. And for those of you who don't know, Pennsylvania has a corporate taxpayer, are allowed to deduct net losses from a subsequent tax year and total state tax liability, and it's known as net operating loss deduction. That's for the corporate side. My question to the panel is, does it make sense that small businesses should be able to use the same type of deduction as part of the tax reform package? And I bring it up now because it's budget time.
That's why we got the finance here.
Representative Reed. I mean, it applies to the corporate, on the corporate side, but wouldn't that be advantageous for small business owners to be able to have the same kind of tax advantage on the net operating loss deduction? Or would it?
Jen came in here, she's starting these conversations. I want to say this. One, I think whenever we're talking tax revenue, we have to look at the subsequent loss of revenue and what that means to our general fund. Because when we start doing, and I supported the NOL on the corporate side because I think that's for certain industries in Pennsylvania that we want to grow. That's very important. If you're starting, and this is why I said for minority companies especially, you have to differentiate the things that are beneficial for small businesses and things that will benefit you as a minority or a woman or a disadvantaged firm, because not all things that are necessarily useful for all businesses means that you're going to be able to take advantage of it the same way. And so, and on top of that, every time we do these types of revenue swaps, there's a subsequent impact to our general fund for roads, bridges, regular education, workforce development, social services, and so on and so forth. And so I'm going to look at the cost-benefit analysis of a switch, but I will tell you, that's why I've started off by saying I'm very interested in what helps MBEs, WBEs, and DBEs, because what we haven't been able to do in this region, in this Commonwealth, is significantly improve the economic opportunities for these types of firms. And primarily, some of it is capital access. Some of it is support through, we give opportunities, or we think we're giving you opportunities, but you get those opportunities and then you get caught into bureaucratic things because you don't have the same cash flow, you don't have the same capital access, and then we look at them and say, oh, well, we gave you opportunity, they never accessed it, and so we're gonna, that's a justification for giving it back to the people we wanted to give it to. That's also the same way with our tax policy. We will say, we will use, and this is not to, because I have a very good working relationship with the statewide chamber, and the statewide chamber comes all the time and they lobby.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen one lobby opportunity from the statewide chamber that, as Ed had said, showed me how it opened up the doors for large numbers of disadvantaged businesses to take advantage of it. Now, if you happen to be in an industry that, and I don't know too many of our MBEs who have been able to take advantage of the NOL. I mean, that Jen may know some, I don't know. I haven't seen a firm that came to me that looked like me that was
Can there be a provision where they can?
Well, right now, if they're at the capacity, if they have losses and they're in the industry and they can show,
have losses.
then they should be able to take advantage of it. But the problem is, I don't think many of our firms, because I think the big companies that take advantage of these are like our research and our companies that have like what's PPG and the.
So you're doing it to scale. What I'm saying is, does it have to be on the same scale? Can it be on a different scale for small business owners, since they're considered small and the corporate is considered large?
So, again, this is why I started. A lot of this conversation is it's a more complicated conversation than 2 minutes will allow.
Oh, sure.
Because what it does is, in this system, when we can't separate out, when we can't have an in different industry cluster and say, look, a small business in this cluster, for purposes of us being able to be fair, instead of defining them as a typical small business from the federal government classification, we're going to say, because we're trying to help MBEs or smaller companies, we're going to define it differently. We don't allow for that. The state doesn't allow for that, so you can't devise a program for that. And so when you devise a program for small businesses, what happens is the small businesses that normally are able to access that program are the ones that are better prepared. And most of them aren't going to be MBEs or WBEs. Most of them are going to be majority-owned firms who are ready and situated. And so if you really want to start to break down this conversation, and I've said this over and over again, this is why I started the day of the MBE lobby day. You all got to lobby for yourself. And then you can join the major chamber effort, because there are some business environment, tax environment things that I think all entrepreneurs could benefit from. But if you're not having your own like track and your own set of policy things that separate you from the majority firms, because the system is set up already to benefit the majority firms, you're going to always be less.
Well, why can't it be set up, Ed, where small business owners
I'm
can
saying,
benefit?
and I'm not speaking for Jake, so I'm gonna say it like this. I don't believe that it can't be. It's what I said before. Business, we all know here, everybody here know business is based on relationships. And it's the fun, the more you foster, cultivate, and nourish a relationship in business, the further you're gonna go. Small business needs to meet with the greater Pittsburgh Chamber, the greater Allegheny County Conference on Community Development, and begin to talk about
And
the
they need to
needs.
meet with the African American Chamber
I'm talking
too.
about, that's what I'm talking about you. I'm talking about you.
Yeah, you were talking about the Greater Pittsburgh
Yeah,
Chamber.
no, I'm talking about, but what I'm saying is even with you meeting with them as well, to talk about here's some of our needs. Here's what we need. When we go to Harrisburg, we need y'all to also be able to advocate on this level. This is where Jake is right. The relationship starts locally. Then you bring that relationship to the state and say, here's what we need to grow. We need that advocacy. A lot of times we don't get the advocacy. We want y'all to do X, Y, and Z. State reps go up there, but they gonna look and see who's in the back of us. And if we don't have nobody in the back of us speaking up about what we need here, then that's just conversational rhetoric. It ain't implementation of a new policy that's gonna introduce a new date. It's not gonna happen. What we need is to say, okay, chambers, from the African American chambers to the Pittsburgh chambers, look, here's the needs of the small businesses that I discussed. We know what the law and the policies are up at the state. How can we work together in order to ensure that everybody's having a fair chance to eat at this table? Then when you come up there, when you talk to us, we have a directive. So now that we have a directive, you got 4 blocks now. We went from 2 to 4. I know the report don't say that, but we went from 2 to 4. You understand what I'm saying? Now we have a directive that talks about what we need to do to help you. But without that level of relationship, we just got chaos.
One of the things, and I'm glad to hear you say it the way that you did, that we do with our members is we send out a survey. And that part of that survey is to ask questions about what is important. We want to be able to feed that information directly to you and have you come back and feed us some responses. Because I don't think we have done enough to ensure that. Weigh in on what's happening around funding for small businesses at the state level. And small businesses as well as some of our nonprofits, because you have a number of them that are here.
So we got a student here, right? AD, Mr. Austin Davis, he done brought notes, bullet points, the whole nine to talk about small business. So we gonna let AD start this one out.
That's fine. So we are just starting, was it 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks ago now, the governor laid out his budget address to the General Assembly. We are just starting next week our budget hearings and to hopefully enact the budget in June. The one thing this is my 3rd budget since I've been in the House, and the one thing I've learned is that the finalized document is usually a lot different than the initial document. So initially, the governor made significant investments to PA First, workforce development, all the programs that support and feed into small business. At the end of the day, the Republicans control the House of Representatives and the Senate. I'm not sure where their priorities are. I think we'll have, by the end of the budget hearings, we will have a better idea of what their priorities are and what they're willing to horse trade with the governor's office, so to speak, to get a budget done on time. So we're still very early in that process. So that would be something we'd have to come back to you on.
Let me cut in for a minute. Just a minute.
Just a minute.
Entrepreneurs in this room, raise your hand if you have a contract with the state. Okay, you got one person in this room that has a contract with the state. The two. And the state budget, by the way, the state budget with state resources are almost $30 billion. You add in the federal resources, you're getting closer to $50 billion. There's a $50 billion industry that only 2 people, entrepreneurs in here, have contracts with. That's a problem.
That is.
Now, if I ask you the same thing, how many of you have a contract with the county? How many have your contract with the city? How many have a contract with? See, look, it's not that you get wealthy on state money or government money. It's a stabilizing force. Yeah. And if we can't open up the door for local entrepreneurs, me giving you a grant, They ain't nothing. You live off of contracts that builds your capacity, that then allows for you to do bigger and better things.
And thank you. And we'll be hearing more about that. You know, it's interesting how quickly time flies. But let me ask if we can do this. I'd like to have a comment from each of you before I go into, we've got some announcements that we have to make, on what you can do to help foster the growth of small business in your closing comment, or how you can work better with the African American Chamber of Commerce here in Western Pennsylvania to ensure that things get to happen. And Representative Lee, let's start with you.
Yeah. Sorry. So obviously, I think that the biggest potential for growth is me in this room. This is a new room for me. I've been in office for 1 year, so I'm still in the process of meeting with folks and learning of their needs and learning how I can best advocate. So I'm the one who is most easily molded here because I don't have that experience in that sense. So I'm interested in learning how I can be the best advocate for you wherever we go. With that said, though, I think that because I don't come from the business world and because I'm not as business minded as some of the other folks, I am a bit more, how do we look holistically at how I can use this office, how I can use this space to help people. And when I think about the folks in my community, the things that are keeping them from being able to be successful in getting contracts and starting and creating small businesses and maintaining their small businesses, I see kind of various issues, some that we talked about. And I think that at the state, the things that we can talk about, that we can control is, and that I think about healthcare. I think about things like that. When I think about the reasons why folks leave their small businesses, why folks can't get into small businesses is because of issues like that. If you can't get health care, then you can't do that. I think about infrastructure. In Braddock, we don't have buildings that are ready. In Homestead, we don't have buildings and spaces that are ready for people to move into. That is one way that we can direct resources, that we can advocate on that behalf. So those are the type of things that I think of. But I'm interested in talking to you more on how I can be a better advocate. She told me to wrap up.
You want to go with me and then Jay will go last?
No, I want to go with Representative Gainey, and then you, Representative Davis, and then we'll go to Jake Wheatley, who this is his stellar year.
First of all, Doris, thank you for having us. I appreciate this. It was more eye-opening than I thought because, again, we should have been having this dialogue, and there's no question about it. And a lot of the questions concerning small business, it really opened my eyes today. And one of the things that I think that we can do just to begin to build this rapport is, I think Austin hit the nail on the head when he talked about once the budget is over and we know how the money is appropriated for small business. One of the things that we could work on together is having someone from the state come down here and talk about how the money has been appropriated for small business. Talk about what programs is out there. Talk about what grants are available. Talk about what the Commonwealth Finance Agency is going to do. Talk about some of the things that's out there to alert us and inform us of what's going on. Because knowledge is power, and a lot of times I don't believe we've ever done that. So, working with the African American Chambers of Commerce to bring them here to talk to you about what's available is a great beginning. And that is something that we can build on together. So that's an initiative from the door that I'm pledging to work with you on to make happen. I'm pledging to do that. And so I have no problem with that. And then just in closing, again, I just want to say thank you. Because this is long overdue. I mean, Jake said something that was powerful to me when he said how many people got contracts with the state and 2 people raised their hand.
There's a reason,
I'm curious, but I'm going to bring out
hand.
how many people got contracts with the county? How many people got contracts with the city? I'm trying to tell you, if we're going to break this whole disparity and everything, it's because access and opportunity is opened up. If the people at the top don't want to open up, that's a problem. We got opportunity. Listen, no problem, no promise. We got a lot of problems. We know what's happened in the atmosphere lately, whether we talk about CMU and the book that was created, whether we talk about the baby market, whether we talk about the judge, Tranquility, whether we talk about any of those things, these are the things that bring opportunity for us.
I'm sorry for cutting you off.
We're going to
we
work together.
Representative Davis.
Thank you. You know, I always got to go after Ed Gainey. That's part of being one of the younger members. But no, well, first, thank you, Doris, and thank you, Sam, for having us today. This was truly, I think, a dialogue that was needed, and I think we have to continue to have this dialogue in order for us to be effective advocates for African American, minority, and women-owned small businesses in the capital. But one thing I'm going to say as I leave, as we end, power. The one thing I've learned in Harrisburg is power feeds nothing without a demand. The minority business owners in this community, in a lot of instances, have a lot of power and capital to make a difference on our political process. So I would encourage you not to take that for granted and to use the power that you're given to affect our political process. It took how many years to get 4 African American state reps from Allegheny County, but there is only so much that we can do as an advocate without you being a part of the process and supporting the work that we do. So I just look forward to continuing to do that, and I would encourage each and all of you to be active in that regard.
To Representative Wheatley, who really kind of spurred this on, because he called us for one thing and then it grew into, well, we have everybody. Why don't we close with you? I'm trying to keep us on time because I've got a number of things yet to do.
No doubt. I got it. I'm going to be very brief because what I'm going to say is going to be very brief. And that is, I echo everything that my colleagues said. I actually want to thank you, Doris, for being willing to convene us and to talk with us and have this conversation. And essentially what I'm going to tell you as entrepreneurs, if you're not advocating on your best behalf, it's going to be hard for us to do it for you. Again, I'm going to tell you the structures that we have in place right now, although many of them have beneficial processes, very few of you will access them, primarily because of maybe some of you are in the industries that we really don't have supports for. So if you're in a service type of sector, there's very little kind of supports that we have through our corporate structures and programs. Some of you are in industries that you primarily get lost in the sauce because you just don't have the bandwidth and the networking opportunities. But I'm going to tell you, March 23rd, come up to Harrisburg, start advocating on your own behalf. Take the day, make it an investment day, come up to Harrisburg, start to meet these people, and start letting them talk to you on a more ongoing basis so that you can see how the process is either helpful or harmful. Then you can talk to us and say, hey, look, I've tried to access this process, which I've talked to entrepreneurs who have, there are just literally too many bureaucratic barriers that doesn't justify your time and energy because you're not going to get the contract at the end of it. You know what I'm saying? So we got to work together because I can help, we can help in the inside, but we're not going through the process. So you need to go through the process and say, hey, if you really want to help me, this is when you need to impact here that'll make it better for me there. So anyway, thank you for having me and looking forward to working with you. March 23rd, Harrisburg, be there. We looking forward